Horror movies are often dismissed as pure entertainment, but the Conjuring franchise has managed to generate over $2.1 billion at the box office, while tackling deep themes about family, faith, and generational trauma. Let me tell you about their latest entry that proves this point perfectly.
That's fascinating. How does this 9th film in the series manage to keep those themes fresh while still delivering the scares?
Well, what's really interesting is how they've structured this as the Warrens' final case. The film centers on the Smurl family haunting in Pennsylvania, but it's cleverly interwoven with this deeply personal story about the Warrens' own daughter, Judy.
Tell me more about how they connected those narrative threads.
So, get this, they established that Judy was actually born during one of Lorraine's first cases, specifically during an encounter with this terrifying mirror. Now that mirror has come back into play as adult Judy, played by Mia Tomlinson, deals with her own supernatural abilities.
That's such a clever way to bring everything full circle. How does the film handle the transition between the younger Judy we've seen in previous films to this adult version?
You know, they do it really effectively by showing how she's inherited not just her mother's abilities, but also that same warmth and compassion we've come to associate with Vera Farmiga's portrayal of Lorraine, though now she's trying to balance these powers with a normal life, including a relationship with an ex-cop named Tony.
The dynamics between the skeptical ex-cop and this family of paranormal investigators must create some interesting tension.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where Ben Hardy's performance as Tony really shines. We get to watch this former law enforcement officer, someone trained to deal in facts and evidence, gradually come to terms with supernatural forces he can't explain or control.
Speaking of control, I'm curious about how they handled the actual scares in this one.
Well, director Michael Chavez took this really interesting approach where the visual effects are used sparingly. They emerge from shadows at just the right moments. Combined with John Frankish's production design and Benjamin Wallfish's score, it creates this incredibly oppressive atmosphere.
That restraint in horror can be so effective. It's like the old saying about what you don't see being scarier than what you do.
Exactly, and they apply that same principle to how they handle Ed and Lorraine's retirement. Instead of just writing them out, they introduce these very human health issues that force them to step back, which adds this layer of vulnerability we haven't seen before.
That must raise the stakes considerably when they do get involved.
It really does, and it's made even more intense because we're dealing with the Smurl family, 8 people all experiencing these terrifying phenomena. The fact that this is based on real events that continued into the 90s makes it even more unsettling.
You mentioned earlier about the franchise's box office success. How does this entry compare to the previous films?
That's what's really impressive. Despite being the 9th entry, it stands among the best in the series. They've managed to create something that works both as a conclusion for longtime fans and as an entry point for newcomers, which is pretty rare in modern franchise filmmaking.
So what you're saying is they've actually managed to stick the landing?
Well, mostly, though I will say, the ending feels a bit too Hollywood polished. But even with that minor criticism, they've succeeded in creating something that honors the series' focus on family relationships while still delivering those genuine scares that had the guy behind me in the theater practically jumping out of his seat.
That's quite an achievement for any horror film, let alone the 9th entry in a franchise.
And you know what's really going to be interesting to watch? How this film's success might influence the future of horror franchises. It shows there's still room for character-driven, emotionally resonant horror that doesn't rely solely on jump scares and gore. On a final note, I am pleased to be able to say that The Conjuring, Last Rites is up there with the best of breed in the Conjuring repertoire. Importantly, even if you haven't seen any of the others in the franchise, this one can readily be viewed and understood in isolation. It scores a 7.5 out of 10.
You've been listening to Movies First.
Available at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or your favourite podcast player. You can also stream on demand at Bytes.com.
This has been another quality podcast production from Bytes.com.